Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Friday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and boy, oh boy, oh boy, for the 32nd time this year, 2019 is officially over. The Mets are done. They lost again last night. 2 consecutive series sweeps at home, 6 straight losses, and to top it off, they go on the road starting this evening with the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm going to talk about last night's disappointing conclusion to the homestand and whether or not I actually believe what I just said about the team being done for 2019. Fittingly, I'm wearing the Howie Rose Put It in the Books shirt today, and I'm curious if we should be putting this season in the books as Mets fans. I'm ever the optimist. I usually am very optimistic. I'm usually expecting the best and hoping for the best, and I'm not one of those Frank Fleming Mets fans that thinks the Mets are never going to win again and calls players bums the second after they do something bad, despite the fact that have been hot or doing something great just prior to that. So I'm not ever going to fall into that category. However, it doesn't make it any less easy to stomach what's going on now. In fact, it makes it harder. The last 6 games have been the polar opposite of the way the homestand started, with the sweep of the Indians. You know, where the Mets were really on cloud 9, and almost like that rain-shortened game that more than likely would have been a complete game shutout for Noah Syndergaard, or at least was shaping up to be that. The rain-shortened aspect of that game sort of cut the season off, it feels like. You know, it feels like the season died right there. And ever since, the Mets have just not been able to get any of that mojo back. None of that moxie that they had in that series has come back at all. The sad part is that the Mets scored... the Mets had 49 hits. I saw this on Twitter this morning. Mets officials posted this on Twitter. 49 hits over the course of this 6-game set, 6-game homestand, 6-game losing streak. And their opponents had 50, and they lost all 6. You know, I mean, what are you going to do? What can you even say about that? You know, that is a crazy statistic. And it is a sad statistic, and it is a sad reality that even though Jake was on the mound, the Mets still couldn't win. And that's the real bummer of it, for me at least, that Jake did everything he could and ended up falling flat. So like I said, the bummer was that Jake was on the mound last night, and that really for 2 nights in a row, the Mets needed both DeGrom and Syndergaard to be the stoppers, to put an end to this slide. And Syndergaard the night before, in just absolutely stupendous fashion, completely failed. Last night, DeGrom did everything you expect of him. I mean, he kept the Cubs to 1 run, which came on a solo home run by Victor Caratini, who, I know, right? I said the same thing. The Mets get on the board early. J.D. Davis with a solo home run. It would be the only Met run scored in the entire game, despite the fact that in every inning subsequent to the first, it seemed as though the Mets had runners on second and third, first and second, first and third, all with 2 outs, and were never able to scratch across a run. That's the big problem right now. That take Syndergaard's start out of the equation, where he gave up the 10 runs. The Mets just have not been scoring, period. I mean, they have just been in an offensive funk. And the worst part is they score those 7 runs 2 nights ago, and they score 1 last night. And everyone on Twitter felt it. I mean, everyone said it. Save some of these runs. You're wasting these runs. Save them for Jake tomorrow. I know I said it. And, they muster 1 run for DeGrom, which, Jake is used to at this point. They don't score for him. So he's got to keep the opponent off the board for as long as possible. The weird part was that DeGrom let the Cubs right back into the game the inning immediately after Davis hits the home run. So top of the second, Cubs tie the game right away. It's like, are you kidding me? Even Jake couldn't believe it. He's like, God, really? The worst of it was that it was Caratini who hit that home run, and then he hit the second home run to really just drive the nail into the coffin. And it was a real bummer for not only the game, but also just for, it seemed like our season, you know, with DeGrom on the mound. If there's any game you gotta win, this is it, man. I can appreciate what Jake said after the game about Caratini putting up a good at bat against him, and he certainly did. But I mean, it's just, man, it is what it is, I guess. And now the Mets find themselves one game above 500 as they head on the road, where they have played much, much more poorly than they've played at Citi Field. Now, does the fact that they lost the last 6 at home mean that fortunes are going to turn and now they're going to play better on the road? Who the hell knows? At this point, I cannot predict what's going to happen, because this has been such a roller coaster ride of a season, up and down, up and down. The ebbs and flows have been so drastic. It's like this team has looked like the best team on the planet and then the worst team on the planet within like a 24-hour window. And it's been multiple times this season this has happened. The shitty part about losing to the Cubs to me was that we had the pitching advantage in all 3 games, although you could argue that the Hendricks-Syndergaard matchup was a little more even, but we had the pitching advantage in all 3 games, and Anthony Rizzo didn't sniff the field, didn't have any at-bats, and that's a guy who is an elite hitter in baseball, and the Mets did not have to play him at all this series, and it didn't matter. The Cubs still swept. So the Cubs did what they had to do. They came in and made a statement. The Mets curled up into a little ball and did not fight back. I don't believe the team is dead. And here's the crazy part, right? I don't believe this team is dead. I refuse to believe it. I have seen them come back like the Phoenix from the ashes too many times this season to give up on this group. Does that mean that they're going to make the postseason? Probably not. I mean, I'm going to be realistic about that. I said but before the Cubs series started, I said the Mets had to go, 20-10 over the last 30. And now we're looking at you got to go, 23 and 4 here on out, or 17 and 4, whatever it is. I don't know. I can't do the math. You lost 3 games that you should have at least taken 2 of. And that's the bottom line. The Mets were primed to take at least 2 out of 3 from the Cubs. They didn't do it. But, again, I'm not giving up on this season. I'm not throwing in the towel on this season. And for once, I'll agree with what Mickey Callaway's been saying this whole time about these being, quote, must-win games. I tweeted it last night. This was a must-win game. But the reality is what Mickey said is completely valid. Until we are mathematically eliminated, it's not a must-win game, and he's not wrong. And part of me can appreciate the even keel nature of the way he comes across and his personality. There is a little part of me that actually does appreciate that from him, that he's not this fiery, asshole-ish, brute, nasty, scream and yell kind of guy. And look, whether we like it or not, from what the players have said in interviews and whatnot, they really genuinely do enjoy playing for Mickey Callaway. So let's remember that he's not our manager. He's not coaching us as fans. He's coaching his team. He's coaching his players. And like I said, his players seem to really enjoy playing for him. So whether we like him or not, what matters is that the players like him and that the results on the field are there. So right now we know that the players like him, and that's it. Because the results on the field have not been quite where we'd like them to be. But they've shown enough flashes that I think there's something here. And let's not get too carried away about the fact that these 6 losses are going to end the season, because they're only 5 games out of the second wild card right now. That's the reality. And yes, there are more teams in front of them again. Fine. But it's 5 games. They've got 27 left to play. Anything can happen. So I'm not giving up on the season yet. And let's also not forget, Brandon Nimmo is coming back from the injured list soon. Jed Lowry looks like he might be returning, making his debut in September. Robbie Cano has been taking grounders on the field. Dom Smith is cleared to resume baseball activities. There are reinforcements on the way to fill in some of these voids on the team and spot some of these guys that go into these mini slumps. Again, not saying it's going to change the world and they're going to make the playoffs because of this, but let's not give up. I'm not, and I don't think you should either. And that's going to be it for today. So, I will be back on Monday. No, sorry, on Tuesday, because Monday is Labor Day. So I'll be back on Tuesday to recap the Phillies series, which hopefully is not as bad as this Cubs series just was, and talk about the first game of the Nats series, which will start on Labor Day. So for those of you who are in Florida, please be safe. Take cover from Hurricane Dorian. And for those of you that are going to be watching the Mets, please be safe. Don't drink and drive. Don't drink, period. Or do. I mean, I'm going to. You sort of have to. But I kid. I'll be back next week. Thanks for watching. Follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. And as always, don't give up. Let's go, Mets.